Martin Scorsese's The Departed follows an Irish mob in South Boston run by Jack Nicholson's Frank Costello, as they attempt to identify the undercover policeman who has been running with them, which of course is Billy Costigan, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. Simultaneously, the Boston police force try to identify the mole who has infiltrated them, and is feeding inside information to Costello and his crew, who is of course Mark Wahlberg's Colin Sullivan. Identity and the nature of good and evil are some of the film's strongest themes. Who really are the good guys, and who are the bad guys? Are things really so simple in real life? As Frank Costello says, concerning cops and criminals, when you're facing a loaded gun, what's the difference? Billy is faced with immense pressure and mental trauma as he navigates his way around detection and being killed by an increasingly paranoid and eccentric Costello, whilst at the same time trying to build evidence for a case against the mobster. Things go from bad to worse when Martin Sheen's Captain Queenan, one of only two men who know Billy is an undercover cop, and the man who Billy directly reports to, is thrown off a building to his death, and with Mark Wahlberg's dignum suspended, Billy is completely alone. The death of Queenan happened after a meeting between Billy and him on a building rooftop. Billy gets a message from one of Costello's goons, Delahunt, that they've found the rat and are on their way. So of course Billy has to make a quick getaway, which he's able to do so. A firefight breaks out between the cops and the gangsters after Queenan is dropped from the building, and Delahunt is shot. Shortly after this, the gang is lying low in a hideout. Most of them are just sitting around, but Delahunt is seriously wounded and is lying on a couch, with no one around him and no medical aid. It appears the mob is unable to do anything about his situation, as they cannot go to the hospital of course because he'll be arrested, so he's forced to lie there and await his death. He calls Billy over and tells him that he thought that whoever did not show up today was going to be the rat, and then reveals that he made a mistake when he told Billy the address, that he gave him the wrong number, but he still showed up to the right one. Billy understands that he's been rumbled, goes for his gun, but Delahunt stops him and cries out, "Tell me why I didn't tell no one. Tell me why." And before he's able to tell Billy, he dies. This is an intriguing scene, very thought-provoking, and it's apparently given context in another scene shortly after where a news report that the gang are watching says that the body of Delahunt was found hidden, and it mentions that he was an undercover policeman. It's an incredible revelation. In a film full of secrets and lies, it's thrilling to think that there was another undercover cop in the crew with Billy, just as it turns out later in the film that Costello had more than one mole in the police force. However, Frank Costello is less than convinced, and throws cold water at this theory when he says, "The cops are saying he's a cop, so I want to look for the cop." In other words, Delahunt was just a goon, but in order to protect Billy and stop Costello from looking for the undercover cop, they labeled the deceased Delahunt as one to throw him off the scent. It is never revealed whether Delahunt was actually a police officer, and ultimately it's left to the viewer to decide for themselves. It wouldn't be a crazy suggestion. In fact, the film implies early on that there are numerous active clandestine operations, like when Billy punches Jimmy Baggs and later Dignam scolds him for it, as he tells him that Baggs was also working undercover. Billy, Colin, Baggs, heck even Costello himself is revealed to be a rat, and that's part of the entire point of the film, that there are rats everywhere, no one can be trusted, and almost everyone in the film is living a lie. Even Vera Farmiga's Madeline, the psychiatrist who is with Colin but loves Billy. It would fill in well with the themes of The Departed for Delahunt to be a cop. Could the cops really give the media the line that this average mafia goon was a police officer working for the state, trying to make the city a better place for men, women and children? Would they really give this gangster the honor and posthumous status of a police officer killed in action, when so many real cops have died in the fight against organized crime? I suppose you can't put much past the FBI, but surely for the facade to come off as genuine, the Boston State Police Force would have to have given him a police officer's funeral. Would they really go that far? There was even a photo of Delahunt in police uniform, which strengthens the idea that he was actually a cop. But then again, Photoshop is a thing, right? Looking at things from Costello's point of view, he's clearly intelligent enough to recognize the cops might use a ruse like this to make him think he's purged his crew of rats, and in fact, given that it's later revealed he was running information to the FBI, Perhaps he got them to check whether Delahunt was a cop or not, and the answer came back negative, which is why he was so certain. Or maybe it's really not that ambiguous, and in fact he was a cop, and the only reason why Costello says he wasn't was so his crew stay vigilant and on their toes. Or possibly, it hurt Costello's ego, and made him look weak to think that someone who was so close to him for so long was a cop the whole time, and it was easier to just deny that Delahunt was indeed a police officer. Another key question that arises is, if Delahunt was a cop, why did he allow Queenan to be murdered? Why didn't he blow his cover to save a state captain from being killed? But again, I suppose you can answer this by saying his life would have been in danger as well, and if he was outed, he would have been thrown off the rooftop as well. So as you can see, there are numerous possibilities and ultimately no clear answer. However, I believe that a clear and cut answer is given if we take a look at an extended version of the scene where Billy and Delahunt talk before Delahunt's death. Take a look at the following video, which is a deleted scene from the film introduced by Martin Scorsese himself. So there's a lot to digest from this scene. First of all, it appears that Delahunt wasn't just waiting to die, but the crew did call a medical professional, who just didn't make it in time. Either that or Fitz was lying to Delahunt about the vet coming so he could have some hope and happiness before he slipped away. And then of course, we get Delahunt's monologue, which adds so much to his character. He's been with Costello for 10 years, we learn, which would be an extraordinary amount of time for a cop to be undercover in a crew. That must be the slowest undercover operation in history. No wonder the cops got another man in there. Is that realistic? I guess stranger things have happened. Delahunt having never killed anyone despite being in such a violent gang might further suggest that he's a cop. But my takeaway from this scene is that Delahunt is quite clearly not a cop, but has gone through some kind of profound spiritual transformation of the past few months or maybe even years. Okay, maybe he hasn't exactly become Buddha, but he is someone who thought he had it in him to take a life, but now knows that he doesn't have it in him to kill someone. Perhaps taking part in the murder of Queenan has had a massive psychological effect on the man, and he knows that to expose Billy would mark Billy for certain death, adding another sin of murder to his tally just before he dies. And he also had selfish reasons for keeping things to himself, as when he tells Billy that he doesn't want to be dumped in a dumpster. He's telling him of all people because he knows he's a cop, so in a way, since he hasn't exposed his secret, Billy owes Delahunt. Perhaps the murder of Queenan affected Delahunt, and the confused soul wants redemption, using themes of Catholic redemption which are so part of Scorsese's filmography, and so the last act Delahunt commits is to spare Billy's life. Perhaps Delahunt, deep down, is a good man, and we don't even need to go as far as to call him a good guy. Even people who have done terrible things often seek redemption in their final moments, when they're thinking about what happens after they die. The Departed, as I stated in the beginning of this video, is a film that plays with and questions the traditional concepts of good guys and bad guys. It turns them on their heads. Appearances can be deceiving. Colin Sullivan, for example, seems like an upstanding citizen, a righteous man, but we all know what he was really like. If you saw Billy with the crew, you'd think he was a bad guy, but he was actually a mentally traumatized cop. Costello was a tough-as-nails, old-school gangster who preached about nobody giving things to you, having to take it, all of that stuff, but it turned out he was selling people out to the FBI, his own people. Dignam had an incredibly horrible personality, but ultimately it is he that dispenses justice at the end of the film. Delahunt is a Costello goon. He does his dirty work, and all things considered, he comes off as a standard cardboard cutout bad guy. But as many gangster films over the years have shown us, just because someone works for the mob doesn't make them objectively a bad guy. Numerous mafia characters in cinema have struggled with their morality, have attempted to do good, or what they perceive to be good. Things aren't always as black and white. The Departed is no Disney movie, and in real life people are full of nuance and contradictions. You know, when I first watched The Departed, it irked me a little that Delahunt says, "Tell me why I didn't tell nobody," instead of "ask me why." It sounded weird to me, but I chalked it up to the way the character talked and didn't think anything of it. But when you take the deleted scene into account, it's almost like Delahunt is imploring Billy. He wants to be told, why didn't he rat him out? He wants to be told, because you're a good man. Maybe I'm looking into it too deep, but it's a fun theory. Perhaps this is why the scene was deleted in the final version. In the extended cut of the scene, it appears what this scene is about is Delahunt having some kind of internal crisis, but with just a few sharp cuts, having him repeat the line, "Tell me why," and then the subsequent scene with the media saying he was a cop. All of a sudden the scene is a lot different, and a new, different question arises: was Delahunt really a cop? I would say in conclusion that in the theatrical version of the film, I would lean on the side of Delahunt being a cop, but taking the deleted scene into context, I would say he wasn't. So what do you think? Do you prefer the deleted scene to what we got, or do you prefer the final version? And do you think Delahunt really was a police officer? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.